To begin with, I'll switch to the front view and I'll draw a profile curve for the pod shape, which I will do under Draw Curve Freeform, and I'll start it up here and place a few points like this. And then right click to finish, and I'll select this curve and use Edit Show Points to adjust some of the points a little bit, maybe bring these in just a little bit. Alright, let's see how that looks. I'll take this curve and then use Construct Revolve and pick the axis line here with 2 points, and that will create the revolve shape. And I can continue to adjust the points a little bit, and the revolve will update, and I will probably make this a little thinner at the top and just some fine tuning. Alright, I'll call that good. And now I can select that profile curve and delete it. I don't want to use it anymore. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Use this when you are not centered on the object in 3D view, or any view for that matter. Hit this reset button and that will frame the objects to fit within the current view. So that's usually if you're out in space somewhere or off, or also if you're not rotating around the point that you wish that you would rotate around, you can hit the reset button and that will center it. Now the way reset works is the first time you hit it, it will focus in on just a selected object. So if I hit it once, it will focus in on that selected curve, and if I hit it again, it will focus in on everything in the whole scene. So you will frequently need to use that, especially to zero in on the spot that you want to look at. Now I'd like to draw the foot piece for this six-legged pod. And to do that, I'll switch to the top view and I'll draw another freeform curve and another profile. About like so. Now there are a couple different ways I could approach building this foot part. I could mirror this over and use it as two rails as in a sweep, or I could do a revolve again and trim off the bottom half of that revolve, or revolve only 180 degrees. But what I'll show you here is what's called rail revolve, which is a revolve that takes a path curve as an additional way to control the shape of the revolve. And I'll actually draw that additional path right here in the 3D view. So let me zoom in on this area a little bit. Now what I'd like to do is I'll draw a hoop that comes above this and over to the other side. And to do that, I will create another freeform curve, but before I draw it, I'm going to drag out a construction line from here and to this point, which gives me a snap point on the equal distance of that on the other side. And so now I can go up, first point there, second point up here. I can now drag another construction line up from here. Now I can get this perpendicular point and the final point here. So what I've done here is I've created a hoop. You'll see that that's a hoop that comes up in the Z direction, and it has an equal distance. It's spaced around this. It's equally spaced around this line, and I did that by using a construction line. Now I'll go and show you that in slow steps over here on another example. So for instance, if I have a line here and I want to create, if I want to draw a line and say that it's right spaced evenly through this one, before I place the first point of the line, I can drag a construction line. And to drag a construction line, you click and you keep the mouse button held down, and then you drag away and release it over here. Now that creates this point, also the midpoint between any 2 points you can find that way, and then the distance repeated over here. So that's a way that you can get things drawn around a sort of medial axis line. So let's go back to here, and now I'll create what's called a rail revolve, which I'll use this as the profile curve. I'll go to revolve, and I'll switch to rail revolve. It's the secondary one underneath revolve. And now I'll select the rail curve. You should look up here in any command. The current stage of the command will be shown up here, and that's how you can know what Moi is expecting for you to do next. So I'll select the rail curve, and now it says pick revolve axis start point. Now it's similar to revolve. I pick an axis to be the pivot point. And here you can see the shape has been created. Now I'll actually come in here and adjust these points a little bit. It looks like I messed up this tip. I wasn't careful to place these two in line. So what I'll do is I'll select both of them. And now you can see what happens if something's not placed in line, that you'll get a pointy tip. And when these 2 points are placed exactly in line with one another, then it'll be smooth. So what I would like to do is select these two and say transform, align, and say vertical center, and pick this point. Now they're exactly aligned together, and the align tool is what you can use to help you line things vertically or horizontally along a straight line, along a straight edge. And let me kind of look at what the proportions of this are. So I'd like to make it a little taller. Let's take these 2 points and drag them upwards. Maybe I'd like to sort of make this a little slimmer on the far part. That's close to what I was imagining, almost like a reminiscent shape of this. Maybe a little taller yet. Maybe I'll stretch this part to the left a little bit. Alright. I'll call that good. That's what my foot will look like. Now I will just select these curves and remove them. Well, let's kind of look at the proportions here. I'll bring this whole thing down a little bit. Now I'd like to place a sort of leg between these two. So once again, I'll draw a freeform curve. And I'll just make it kind of come up and through there. Right click to finish. Now I'd like to create a kind of tube that goes along here, and to do that I'll draw a circle, and I'll draw it away from this path. I'll make sure it's outside of the bounding box around that so that it will get automatically moved into place. Then I'll take that profile, go to construct, sweep, and select this rail curve, right click, and you can see I've got a tube there. Now that's not quite, I want something that's, not quite such a simple profile really. And to get a more customized profile, there's a couple different ways you can do it. One way you can do is to create more than one profile. For instance, if I say 2 profiles and now sweep, you can see that it will start with this one here and it will grow to this larger one at the end. That's one method you can use to create more custom profiles. In fact, I can put something like a polygon over here even and sweep all of these. Which now will start at a small circle, go to a larger circle in the middle, and now it's a It's a polygon at the very end here, but that's not quite what I want. It's just a demo. Now, an entirely different method, instead of using multiple profiles, is to use what's called a scaling rail. Now, a scaling rail is an additional curve that I draw along the rail, and it will be used to stretch the profile to match up to this curve, and you can get a much more customized type of shape using this method. So now if I take my circle, which I shouldn't have deleted, but there you go, it's back again, and sweep it along this shape as the rail, now I can use this pick scaling rail option, pick this as a scaling rail, and you'll see how this deforms to stretch out to meet the shape there, to meet the scaling rail. And let's take a look at that. That's much more the kind of customized shape that I was thinking of, and at every point along it, it's matching this scaling rail profile. It stretches and stretches from the center to meet those. Now you can see that it's stretching only in one direction, that it stayed the original width in here, and that's what this maintain height option does. I'm going to go here and uncheck that because I kind of want it to be scaled in all directions instead of just that one direction. And that's sort of the shape I was thinking about right there. At this point, I'll hit done, and you can mess around with this scaling rail too before deleting it. So for instance, if I stretch it out this way, you'll see the sweep update, and you can play with it and tweak it, fine-tune it. Let's just see what that does. It'll be kind of rather lumpy now. But actually I'm going to undo that because I kind of like my original one. Now I'll just delete all of these. So this scaling rail is a rather powerful way to create a custom tubular shape. With only these three curves, a circle, the central rail path, and the scaling rail, three curves created this quite custom leg shape. So now I will select these two and use construct Boolean union to fuse them together into one object, one solid. Then I will select the edge where they meet, and to select an edge you select the entire object first, and then you move over and click a second time, and the second time you click on a solid, the selection will drill in and move to edges or faces. So that's how I selected it. By clicking a second time, I selected this edge. And now I'll perform a fillet, construct fillet. And I'll just pick 2 points to define the distance. And maybe I'll go a little bit larger than that. I'm looking up here to see the distance that I'm getting. And maybe even a little bigger. Alright, right click to accept that. Now I'll take this solid and I'll say transform array circular around the origin point, and I'll make 6 copies. Now I think I'll bring this down slightly. Alright, now I'll select all of these and say construct Boolean union. Now these have all been fused together into one solid. This is in one single solid, this whole object now. And now I will select these edges. And after you select one edge, then you can do a window select and it will target edges. So it sort of primes the pump in a certain way. If you select a face, so for instance, if I went here and select this face, now Windows Select will select other faces. And if I select an edge, then another Windows Select will select edges. And sometimes it helps to sort of line things up so that you can do Windows Select a little easier. So for instance, right here, I'm lining this up so that these are all nice and easy to capture with one single window. And now I've selected all those edges. And now I'll fill it again. And let's see, that might be a little bit large for that area because they'll run into each other here. I'll just pick two different points to interrupt that and calculate a slightly smaller fillet. But I can go a little bigger than that. I'll try 1. Just type in 1. And it looks like I can even go a little bit more. Let's try 1.2. Alright, well, any much more bigger and they're going to start to run into each other. So that's it. Right click to finish fillet. And this is my strange 6-legged pod.